The transfer portal giveth and taketh away. Who are the biggest losses out of the ACC?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. On this episode, we will discuss the crazy milestone, regular season milestone that Duke's Cooper Flagg has just reached. And he does so with 5 regular season games to spare. On the football side of things, well, this applies to basketball as well. How much NIL potential is there at SMU? Because that Texas money, it hits different. And I see now Texas Tech trying to enter the same stratosphere that Texas A&M and, of course, the Texas Longhorns are already in. Can SMU get there as well? And of course, you know, SMU, they try to add players through the portal and not lose too many guys. But, you know, Kenton, we've got updated rankings, I should say, from 24/7 Sports on the highest rated transfers from every ACC team, but the outgoing transfers. Now, I think from NC State, I can tell you who Miami's is. We'll go through the rest. But who to you was the biggest loss for your Wolfpack in this last transfer period?
Oh, it had to be Jalen Parker, linebacker. No, obviously it was Kevin Concepcion. It was, you know, there's no doubt about it. KC was he still is an extremely special talent. I mean, the young man can do it all. He was like a Debo Samuel type of guy. And I would say he had more top end speed than Debo. You know, he was a little bit thinner, but he still played with that, a very wiry type of strength to where it was tough to get him down. Good contact balance, hell of a route runner. He had some drop issues last year, but again, that is not to disparage the young man at all. You know, I know that he's going to go down there. I believe he's at Texas A&M now. I know he's going to be down there crushing it in Aggie land because he's special.
Well, in Texas A&M, that goes back to the Texas NIL money. It hits different, and in most of these, I think, if not all of these, the top outgoing transfers from ACC schools, most of these went to teams out of conference, unfortunately. So they're not only did their teams lose these players, but the conference lost them as well. And yeah, 24/7 Sports agrees with you. Casey Concepcion is the top outgoing transfer from NC State. He's ranked the number 16 overall transfer and the number 5 overall receiver. The top outgoing transfer from Florida State. And I know that they bring a lot of guys in every single year, but this is definitely a tough loss because, you know, despite the awful season that they just had, Kenton, not every single player was bad with the Seminoles last year. Patrick Payton, probably the bright spot. He number 6 overall transfer, number 2 edge rusher, and he goes from FSU to LSU. So Patrick Payton, another one of those who unfortunately left the conference.
You know, more power to him. He is a hell of an edge rusher, and he really came on late last season because to start it off, things were a little slow for him. You know, he was dealing with more pressure. He wasn't used to being the guy at the college level because remember now, last year you had Jared Verse and Braden Fisk on the same defensive line as you. So you were just a guy, not the guy. The offenses were like, him, stop him. He is the thing. If we stop him, we'll be okay. So we got off to a little bit of a struggle in adjusting to that. But once he figured it out, it was like Lethal Shooter when he says, I understand it now, because he really got it at a high level and really was doing good things at the end of the season, despite that being an abysmal team overall.
Oh, awful. Clemson, also their top loss, and Clemson doesn't lose a lot of guys through the portal. Their retention is very strong, partially because they don't they actually took 3 players through the portal this year, which was up 300% from what they took a season ago when they took nobody. But Clemson lost defensive lineman Trey Williams, who went to Michigan. Their D-line, though, Kenton, should still be really deep without Williams. He was the number 8 overall defensive lineman, number 61 overall player in the transfer class. So I think they're going to be okay. And of course, Michigan, after their down year, I mean, they beat the national champs, but it was a down year for Michigan last year. They've addressed a lot of needs in that portal. So another one that goes from the ACC elsewhere, in that case to the Big Ten.
Yeah, if there's any position group where Clemson could afford a loss like this, it's the defensive line.
Yeah.
It's the defense. They have bodies on bodies on bodies on that defensive line, so they'll be all right.
Yeah, and so for Miami, Miami's retention was pretty good. They did lose a couple of players who would have been in line to start though next year, including Isaiah Horton, who wide receiver who transferred from Miami to Alabama. That was an unfortunate loss. He goes ACC to SEC. It had Horton stayed for another year at Miami, Kenton, he would have been the only returning starting receiver or tight end from last year's team. So there's going to have to be a lot of new and different weapons for Carson Beck next year. You know, obviously this was someone Bama really coveted. I think it's a little bit ironic though, because at the time that Isaiah Horton left Miami, I think he thought he might be going to go play with Jalen Milroe and not having any idea who Miami's quarterback was going to be, because that was long before Carson Beck committed to Miami. So, Miami's quarterback situation may look a little more stable at this moment than Bama's, because I don't know who Bama's starting quarterback is going to be next year with Milroe going pro.
I mean, more power to Horton, but this is a situation for Miami where it's like you're completely reshuffling the deck at every offensive skill position except running back. And even at running back, you're losing Martinez, but you still got Fletcher and company coming back. Every other running back not named Martinez is back, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that's the only position where they're maintaining a decent level of stability in terms of, hey, we know who this guy is, but man, that's a blow to Miami, because as much as KC leaving NC State hurts, KC was not the leading receiver last year. Not only was he not the leading receiver last year, he wasn't the youngest guy to show promise last year. So, you're looking up and saying, hey, that's a packed wide receiver room. You got tight ends that are phenomenal and all that good stuff, that have shown it, that have done it at a high level on the field. And with Miami, you're looking at the exact opposite. Luckily, Miami has and when I say a hell, I mean a hell of a star-studded cast on defense coming back, because, you're not expecting those 50 to 45 games anymore. You're not expecting them anymore.
Right. Yeah, I think Miami's defense will get significantly better. The offense will not be as good next year. So there's going to be a little bit of give and take on that. Actually, I thought Isaiah Horton maybe could have been ranked a little higher than he is. They have him as the 17th rated receiver. I think this was a deep receiver portal class, was part of that. 59th overall rated transfer. A couple of other notable ones out of the ACC, Kenton. Quarterback Malik Murphy from Duke, who was the 6th rated quarterback, but I thought they did a good job replacing him with Darian Mensah. So I give credit to Duke, because that might end up being a net gain, not a net loss for them. But I think a big loss for Georgia Tech is wide receiver Eric Singleton, who went to Auburn. Now, he was the number 1 rated receiver in the portal, so that was obviously a huge loss for the Yellow Jackets.
Oh, to say Eric Singleton can go is an understatement. That young man is like the Flash. If he is even, he is leaving. If you see the back of that jersey, let me give you a friendly word of advice to everybody in SEC country. I know it just means more down there. Well, I want it to mean more when you're getting your rest as well. If you see the back of that jersey and you see Singleton running away from you, don't chase him. Go ahead, head to the sideline, get your Gatorade, get ready for the next play, because that young man, he is an absolute burner. And I'll tell you, the other thing about him, he is such a professional. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. He didn't drop many passes. He was a guy that, he just did things the right way. At least that's how I perceived it in terms of watching him play. He's a special talent. The ACC is hurting for losing him. Georgia Tech definitely is hurting for losing him, because, again, that guy can absolutely ball.
Now, in terms of top-ranked transfers, the only one that I see here that actually went from one ACC team to another was
our boy Thomas Castellanos. Oh, no, not Thomas Castellanos.
No, not Castellanos. He went to the SEC, so it was.
I thought Castellanos went to Florida State.
It was an offensive lineman from, here it is, offensive lineman from Louisville, offensive tackle Monroe Mills, who went from Louisville to Virginia, of all places, number 4 ranked offensive tackle in the transfer class, number 44 overall player with a 4-star transfer rating. That was what, at least there, the cannibalization, you don't lose a good player out of the ACC for that one.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the day, that's going to be a blow to Louisville's running game. But again, those two backs, I love them. I really think that they're going to be one of the better running back duos in the nation next year, because you got two guys extremely young playing their first meaningful snaps of college football. What were they averaging last year? 6 or 7 yards a carry? It was freakish. So
it was over 6 for sure.
So, when you bring those two back, I'm not saying that an offensive line doesn't matter, because it does. Offensive lines are what allows you to average that 6, however many yards before contact. But even after contact, those two were special when they took that ball under their arms.
When we come back, there is about to be just stupid money going through Texas Tech's NIL. Is this a sign of things to come for another school in Texas, SMU, in the ACC? You want to keep it locked. We're only getting started. It's tax season, guys, and it's not too late. We're still in March. Well, actually, no, we're in February. What am I talking about? It's not even close to being too late. So you want to get on this. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton, Gibbs, and Grayson Boone do an awesome job on Locked On Wolfpack, covering all things NC State. I host Locked On Canes, talking all things Miami. We gotta get an SMU host soon, Kenton, especially with the way this Texas money is coming in now. The first part of the story is not ACC related, but you've noticed in recent years, and obviously even before NIL was a thing, right, Texas Longhorns, very big spenders when it comes to facilities, infrastructure, coaches. Texas A&M have become really big spenders since they joined the SEC, especially. And we know Texas A&M has been very active in NIL in recent years. And this per On3 Sports, Texas Tech NIL collective founder Cody Campbell has sold his oil and natural gas company, Double Eagle, for $4.1 billion. And they note the Red Raiders recently locked down the #1 transfer portal class. So you've got, and honestly, you sell your company, you're already the leading, NIL guy, booster at Texas Tech, and now you sell your company for $4.1 billion. Where do you think a lot of those he could probably earmark $2 billion of those to go towards Texas Tech related expenditures?
Oh, he absolutely could. But I'll tell you what, the tie-in to SMU, it's already here, whether we realize it or not. For those of you who don't know, I want to read a quick excerpt from an article from the New York Times, The Athletic here. Halfway around the world during some of the long days in the Middle East, SMU football always stayed on the mind of Paul B. Lloyd Jr. Lloyd has made a lot of good investments in his life. He made millions in oil and drilling, like so many Texans in the second half of the 20th century, as an executive and investor. But he wasn't just an oil guy. He was a proud former SMU football player. So what does that mean, folks? The title of this article, SMU's billionaire boosters made an unprecedented bet, and it paid off with a playoff berth. I don't think y'all understand. Texas is not new to this. None of them are new. The SMU boosters, How do y'all think that SMU came to this conference and made the agreement? We're not going to take a dime of your money. We just want to be in the conference. Just put us in. Why do you think UCF wasn't able to make that same gamble? Why don't we look at there are plenty of schools that were in the G5 that could not make that same. You think Tulsa and the Golden Hurricanes say, hey, Miami ain't the only Hurricanes need to be in this conference. Let us in. The funds just ain't there. Because let's be very honest. The way that the ACC is right now, who would they deny if they said, we're not taking no money. We just want to be here. We just want to be at the park. You don't even got to talk to us. We don't got to do nothing.
We need your money. We got our own money here.
Exactly.
Well, and SMU, I mean, for people who know the history, the good and bad of that athletic department, I mean.
Free Sherwood Blunt. He did nothing wrong. Free my dog.
40 years ago, they were doing NIL before it's legal. In fact, the letters NIL for most people stand for name, image, and likeness, but for SMU people, it stands for now it's legal, is what NIL stands for. Now it's legal. And that was a great note, by the way, about that oil guy. I hadn't seen that. I've got a couple of other stats on SMU. This is from a Sportico article, Sports Business. The athletic department at SMU raised $100 million in the 5 days after its move to the ACC was announced back in September of 2023. It received 4 donations above $10 million during that fiscal year. They note even before moving to the ACC, SMU boasted a donor class befitting big league status. A 2016 accounting found the school was tied for 8th among Power 4 schools in alumni on the Forbes 400 list. Its $2 billion in endowment puts the place some refer to as Southern Millionaires University squarely in the middle among ACC peers, and many of its biggest donors, having ties to the school during its 80s heyday, were eager to help return it to the top of college sports. So there's been money coming in, and all this to say, I'm actually a little bit surprised because seeing all of this Texas stuff and thinking about all the money at SMU. I double checked the transfer portal class rankings for this year. Maybe they just didn't need that many players, but I'm actually surprised SMU only has the 33rd ranked transfer portal class. Like, I don't know, maybe they'll spend more in the spring. I'm actually surprised they didn't add more guys, especially Kenton coming off a college football playoff berth. Like, I would have thought there'd be more momentum to go into the portal and grab more top players than they did.
Not only that, you offer a college football playoff berth and you're returning your starting quarterback. You talked about how deep this wide receiver class was in terms of the portal. I'm shocked that more top name receivers weren't like, hey, let's give it a look. I like the way Kevin Jennings plays some football. I like the way Rhett Lashley calls a game. If we can go down there, we could make something special happen. And another thing that Rhett Lashley can boast that most coaches can't, I have successfully converted a ton of players from one position to the next. And it's not like I got to reach back into, back in 95, I told Big Horse Morelli, you're not an offensive guard, you're a nose tackle. And he became a great nose tackle. No. He could show everybody, hey, that Bashard Smith character that was all conference, what do you think he was doing before he got here? So it's an objective fact that they have a lot going for them. So I'm surprised, too, that they didn't have a bigger NIL or a bigger portal class. But I'll also say this. With revenue sharing coming down the pipe, do you imagine, do you think they'll keep it separate to where, like, hey, you cannot throw anything additional onto the revenue sharing part of it? Or do you think it'll be it's pay them what you want to pay them, do what you want to do, but it has to reach at minimum the revenue sharing amount? Just a quick question for you.
I think that's what it's going to be, the latter scenario, okay? So I don't think revenue sharing is going to be a salary cap. It's basically going to be like, this is what you have to require, and then anything else on top of that is your business.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you what, SMU is in the business of big business. So if you leave it to be their business, them boys going to be walking around with Rolls Royces and Bentley trucks and Mercedes, Ferraris, Fiskars, all that good stuff. And I ain't mad at them. They deserve it. You know what I mean? Hey, if you could get to a school with some oil money, I ain't mad at you. If y'all need a host for Locked On SMU, hey, George Bush, call me. Go ahead. I know you one of the mega boosters. Put in the call, GW. Put in the call. This child don't want to be left behind.
That's right. And by the way, they added 14 players. It was a pretty big portal class. It's just like all the guys were 3-star and below. But again, like that's 24/7's rankings. Like, do they know better than Rhett Lashley? And when you mention, how they had Brashard Smith last year, they actually added another former Miami running back who I think could maybe play a similar role, Chris Johnson. So Chris Johnson, like, you mentioned Miami having a lot at running back. Like, he probably would have been third or fourth on Miami's depth chart. Also, Miami likes power backs more than the speedy, shifty guys. So I think Chris Johnson, because he's a speedy, smaller guy, but I think he could fit in very, very well. Like, he could really do what Brashard Smith did last year at SMU. So that's probably the guy that they essentially replaced Brashard Smith with. Someone who is irreplaceable is Duke basketball star Cooper Flagg. And Duke, they get a dominant win against Virginia. They're very much back to their winning ways. And Flagg is going to be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft in a few months. He reached a crazy milestone, and he's still got 5 regular season games left. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Thank you for making us your first listen and your first watch. You should also check out Locked On College Football. I mean, some of the same things we've spoken about on this episode are spoken about at length by Spencer McLaughlin, who always brings it strong. Locked On College Football is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So, Kenton, how about this? I know that it's not been the most exciting regular season for the ACC from top to bottom this year, but every time I watch Duke, I realize like I'm watching a truly special player, and I'm watching history in the making every time I see Cooper Flagg on the court. So Cooper Flagg has become the first ACC player with 500 points, 100 assists, 30 blocks in the regular season in the last 25 years. And Kenton, he's reached those milestones, that collection of stats, with 5 regular season games to spare. First guy in 25 years in the ACC. It's a pretty good basketball conference historically. 500 points, 100 assists, and 30 blocks in a regular season, and he's not done yet.
He's a special talent. I mean, there's nothing else you can say about this guy other than he's truly one of one. He's a guy he has forward and front court length, but he moves like a guard. He does everything basically as a 2 guard, and he defends at such a high level as well as an on-ball defender and as a help side defender because of that length and anticipation. Cooper Flagg has all the goods. There's really nothing that you look at him for and you say, oh man, he's just lacking it. He's not sneaky athletic. Do you know how athletic a white guy has to be to not be labeled sneaky athletic?
That's a great point. And I never even got the sneaky. I was not athletic or sneaky athletic. I can appreciate Cooper Flagg for just being athletic.
I'm telling you, this young man is a man amongst boys in college right now. And even if this was one of the ACC glory days, even if this was one of those, years where the ACC is loaded and anybody 1 through about 9 can make a Final Four run, even if it was that type of ACC, Cooper Flagg would still shine as one of the brightest amongst all the stars in the conference. Because again, he's a unicorn in the truest sense of the word. We will not, the stat says it all. We haven't seen this since I was 4 years old last time we saw this. I was 4. I'm bald for those of you who can't watch. For those of you who just listen, my hair is all gone now. And I was 4 when the last time the ACC had something like this. So, the kid is special, and that's all there is to him.
By the way, on a side note, while we're talking hoops here, so at this moment, we'll see if anything else comes open at the end of the season. Well, actually, one of these is coming open at the end of the season, but we know Leonard Hamilton is going to be retiring at the end of the year for Florida State. So the Florida State job is essentially open already because they can start looking for people out there. The Virginia basketball head coaching job is open. The Miami head coaching job is open. Which of those 3 do you think is the best job? Because I actually, based on their recent history and the standard that Tony Bennett set there at UVA, I'd probably lean to UVA, and then it's a little bit tougher between Miami and Florida State because obviously Jim Larrañaga really raised the bar at Miami. They were in the Final Four just 2 years ago, which is actually more success than Leonard Hamilton ever had at Florida State. But then Florida State is also, a big state school with maybe more resources, but maybe Miami's got more wealthy donors. It's tough to say, but I mean, do you agree with me that UVA is probably the best of those openings for hoops?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're saying, hey, this is my first stint in a power conference, and I'm not sure I want the pressure of following up like the standard. Do you want to go into UVA? Is that where you want to be at? And some people say, well, that's a bad attitude to have. But I mean, let's be realistic here. If you want to say, I want a place where they'll give me 3 to 4 years off the bat just because they hired me, regardless of how good, bad, and different, figure it out, get my lab legs under me, you'd have a much better time at that with a Miami or with a Florida State. But if you're going to a place, because let's be honest, in Florida, particularly South Florida, football is king. You can play it all year round. That is not a problem. But if you're looking for a place that is a hotbed of talent for basketball, and you have all of the support and everybody's going to throw their support and boosters behind you instead of football, go to UVA. That's where you're going to get it. Yeah. Florida State, football is always going to be king. Even at 2-10, football was still king. So, there's, depending on what you're looking for, I think that's kind of how you would make your decision. But again, if you're talking where you would get the most support as a coach, like, hey, I'm going to have all of the resources and all that, and the attention won't be split. With all due respect, I'm not sure Tony Elliott is there next year. I'm not sure they're going to be, looking to say, oh, we got to re-up his contract. We got to give him $8 million a year. So, you'll be able to be the beneficiary of that if you can make that team successful. So to me, if I was a head coach, I'm the type that I like competing. Give me Virginia. I want to be the guy that follows the guy to show you, oh, no. That's the norm around here. We may not play pack line defense. We may not play slow it down. But you know what we have in common with Tony Bennett? When you look up at that scoreboard at the end of the game, it's going to say UVA more points than your ass. That's just the type of guy I am.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it this way, and I think I know Miami is going to be pretty aggressive in finding their next basketball coach, and I would certainly imagine Florida State would be as well. But like, if you think about it, like if you've got like a top basketball candidate and like he's like a top coaching candidate, and he's choosing between UVA, Miami, and Florida State, like UVA would probably be tough to beat because you're going to get that support for basketball. So that's probably, I mean, if you had all three of them offer you a contract for similar money, maybe UVA offers a little bit more because there's no state income tax in Florida for the Florida State Miami job. You're probably picking UVA, I would think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Again, for me, it comes down. If I was a head coach, it would come down to a few things. I want to be at a place with a tradition of winning. Number one. Number two, like you said, it's a place where football will always be king. If you look at Florida State and Miami right now, right? Even though Florida State is on the down, Norvell is getting paid. He had to restructure his contract. All it takes is 1 or 2 good years again for Norvell. If he does what he did last time, builds this team up to 8 wins next year, and then 9 wins the year after that, and then takes them to the playoff and is undefeated and all those things, you don't think that he's going to be due for a crazy big contract? And Cristobal is knocking on the door for it as well. He's right there.
Right.
Boop, 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 boop. Hey, now I had you 1 game away from the playoff. If he gets him into the playoff, is Carson Beck is everything that Brett Freelander believes he is, then, I love you, Brett. Just had to poke a little fun at you. But in all seriousness, if he is all those things, then guess what? It could be time to re-up for Cristobal as well. And at the end of the day, there's only so much coaching money pie to go around. So,
yeah, no, that's 100% right. And by the way, I'll add this real quick. Freelander is not the only one, along with me, bullish on Carson Beck. Like Paul Feinbaum actually said that Carson Beck can push Miami into the college football playoff. And he said that this was a net loss for Georgia and a net gain for Miami. Feinbaum is dissing his constituents at Georgia in favor of an ACC school. You love to see it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. I am not sold on him being a temperature changer, but I would not disagree at all in terms of what in terms of what Miami was bringing back quarterback room wise. You're damn right it's an upgrade. In terms of what Georgia is bringing back quarterback room wise, you're damn right it's a downgrade. I think that he's a guy that's going to. I think he's good. I don't want anybody to mistake it as me saying Carson Beck is terrible. If he's got no haters, I've left this earth. It's not that. I just don't think that he's a guy that he's like, you put him on any offense with any group of guys, he's going to make that offense something. I don't think he's that. And that's where I differ from some of the people who are super high.
Yeah, no, I get it. I appreciate everyone for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you support Kenton on Locked On Wolfpack. Support me at Locked On Canes. And we will talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.